Inspired in the scrunchies on a row, I decided to make some bows. I work on an Addi 22 and we are going to cast in the regular way with waste yarn. Make sure that your waste yarn is a contrast color with the actual color that you are going to use for your bows. We are going to start with 5 rows of waste yarn. Usually when I start with my first row, I have some troubles getting it to run, but then it starts running smoothly after that. When I complete my 5 rows of waste yarn, I am going to make a change of colors. I will start with a red bow, and I will make sure that I leave a long tail about 30 centimeters long, and I make a loose knot or a loose bow to attach the waste yarn and my red yarn. Make sure that every time that you change the yarn, you set up your counter back to 0. So in this case, I'm setting it to 0 before it gets to the black peg, and I will do 20 rows of this first color, the red color. When I get the 20 rows, I am going to change the yarn and I will go back to my waste yarn. However, in this case, instead of doing only 5 rows of waste yarn, I will do 10 rows of waste yarn. And the reason behind this is that I will cut the waste yarn in between bows to be able to close them. And I try with less rows than 10 rows, and it's very difficult to keep all the stitches of my actual bow and my waste yarn separate. You will see later on when I cut them what I mean with this. So you do your 10 rows of waste yarn. And as I mentioned, the reason of doing it a little bit longer is to make it easy to cut when I am separating my bows, one from the other. But we don't cut until we have all the bows that we want in one colorful snake. Again, I will add a second color. This will be my second bow. I will use a colorful kind of yarn. I make a loose knot or a loose tie, set my counter back to 0, and then I start again and I do 20 rows on the new color. We are going to change once again the color that I'm using for this bow for waste yarn. In the same way that I left a long tail to start with a color, I will leave a long tail at the end of the color, and these tails will be used to tie the bow in the middle and also to close the ends. I'm adding a third color, and you can do this colorful snake with as many colors as you want, as many bows as you want to get. And you just keep working on it because it gets all twisted in the middle. Usually after my third bow, what I do is I pull everything up, and I will make a donut in the middle that will keep all the pieces and all the pieces of yarn that are loose contained, and it will help me with my tension as well. As you can see, in this case I have 3 different colors of yarn, which means 3 different bows, and then the yellow yarn is for it's just waste yarn. I added an last color or 2 more colors, and now I'm working on my last waste yarn because this is going to be my last row or my last bow. I am only doing 5 rows of waste yarn, and I just keep going until all the work comes out of the machine. And you pull your donut all the way, and then you will get different colors of bows and the yellow that is the waste yarn. So we have 5 of these bows in here with 10 rows of waste yarn in between bows, and 5 at the beginning and 5 at the end. Now I'm tucking in all the pieces of yarn because I need them out of my way so I can cut. Before I do that, there are 2 ways of closing the bows. One is the way using the crochet, going back and forth with the crochet, which is, it's okay to do it. I'm just showing it a little bit here, but I do prefer to do my closure with a needle because I find that it ends up being a lot flatter. So it's flat, so I can have very clean edges at the end of the bow. But you can use the needle or in the way that I am going to show you, or you can use your crochet. Now, we talk about cutting this waste yarn right in the middle. So first of all, we have to make sure that all the other loose ends of the yarn is tucked in. So when you are cutting, you are not cutting the yarn for the other bows, right? So you just tuck it in and make sure that the long tail of your red is pulled towards the top. So then that middle yarn or middle waste yarn is free of any other colors of yarn, and then you just start cutting right in the middle, like more or less like 5 rows from the end of one of the bows and the beginning of the other bow. And you cut and you separate your bow, your red bow from the colorful bow. And here it is. So you still have a bow with 2 ends of waste yarn. Now we are going to close the bow in the way that I usually do it, using my needle. So I go on my first loop on the top, the first on the bottom, and then I go to the second loop on the bottom and back to my first loop on the top. And I go to the second on the top and back to the second on the bottom. So every time that you go back, you go to the one that you used before, but starting from the next one or the one beside the one you are working. And you keep going like that until you get to the end. And this is what I like, what is coming is what I like about this technique. I will pull my yarn until all the loose loops that went back and forth get, or the yarn gets straight, and that will give me a flat edge to my bow. And then when I have that, I make sure that everything is even, that I don't have any areas where the red yarn is loose. And then I just pull my waste yarn from that end. And make sure that it's straight, nice and straight. And then I will do the same on the other side of the bow. Sometimes on that side you will notice that there is like one of the loops is missing, so you have to start making that loop back, and then you will do your closure with back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I'm knitting that last loop, and now I can close my top and bottom, going back and forth. And I will go to that one beside it, and when I go back up to the first one the same one that I started, and then beside and to the bottom will be the one that I just started. I do the same, I pull my yarn, and in this case the waist yarn will not come out as neatly as the one before because this has little pieces. It's a little bit messy, but it works perfectly with 5 rows. You get a lot of room to work with when you are closing your bow. Clean all the excess of that waist yarn. Make sure it's flat and nice. And then you pinch both sides of the bow, and you are going to use that yarn through the inside to do the cinching of the bow. For this video, we will use a barrette in the middle. So I start with the corner and I go back in and I will make a little knot. When you pull the knot, make sure that you are not pulling all the string from the rest of the edge. Make sure that your edge is still flat and nice. And then you go beside the knot and all the way to the middle of the bow. And you get that piece of yarn through the middle. You do the same with the other side. And we are going to use those ends to cinch my bow. I usually do the 2 pinches right in the middle, and it gives a nice shape to the bow. It was somebody posted this technique in one of the groups, and I like it very much because the bow looks really, really nice. You do 1 or 2 loops crossing both sides of the yarn, one through the top, one through the bottom, and then we will do a little knot on the other side to start adding the barrette to it. So I do my little knot, making sure that when I tie it the corners of my bows do not go in, because remember, they are attached to the corners, right? And when I got the shape that I want for it, I just secure with a second knot. I secure it, and I will start attaching my barrette. So one thing that works for me is I put my crochet on one of the ends of the barrette, and I use a needle or 2 needles, and I just put the yarn through the barrette in between the 2 ends of the barrette and go underneath and then around the bow, and then I do the same with the other side of the yarn and go underneath and around, and I do it 3 or 4 times. And that's a way of securing the barrette to the bow. Always make sure that everything that you are attaching is centered. You can also use your fingers to do the rest of the attachment after you did a couple of rows, and you just open it and put the yarn underneath, and at the end you are going to make another knot, a double knot. Sometimes I do a triple depending on that kind of material I am using. And I will hide it using these knots will be hidden using my needle. They will go inside of the bow. I make sure that I go underneath the cinching area and then into the bow, and when I get to the other end of the bow, I pull very, very hard just to make sure that the knot hides underneath the cinching area. And you cut the excess. The other one is a little bit shorter, so I didn't need to cut anything. I just hid the rest inside of the bow. Like that. And then to finish it, I will add a little bit of hot glue in both ends of the barrette, and your bow is ready. Repeat the process with the rest of your bows and add barrettes, elastics, or headbands.